Welcome to Season 2 of Producer Points. My name is Justin Gamella, and I'll be your host. I'm a producer and songwriter who's had the honor of working with some of the best in the industry. This season, we're diving even deeper into one-on-one conversations with producers, mixers, songwriters, and artists, exploring their unique journeys, creative process, and insights that shape great music. Join me for real talks, straight from the studio, where music and life intersect. This is Producer Points. Welcome to another Producer Points Roundtable episode. Today we're going to be talking about sync licensing. Sync licensing has become one of the most powerful ways for artists, songwriters, and producers to get their music heard. A single placement on a hit show, a movie trailer, or a national brand campaign can change the trajectory of a career overnight. But breaking into that world isn't easy. From navigating briefs and building industry connections to writing songs that actually fit what supervisors are looking for, there's both an art and a business to getting it right. On this roundtable, we're pulling back the curtain on how sync really works, the strategies that open doors, the pitfalls to avoid, and the creative choices that make a song perfect for picture. Whether you're an artist hoping for your first placement or a producer aiming to expand your catalog, this conversation is about what it really takes to land syncs in today's industry. Our first guest is an independent artist, songwriter, and producer whose music has landed syncs on HBO, Disney, and Hulu. She also hosts the Laid Back podcast, Enlighten or whatever. She's an amazing artist. Let's welcome Lowen. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Justin. And for the sake of the pod, you can call me Emily.
I will call you Emily. I'll call you whatever you want me to call you. Our next guest is a powerhouse songwriter and producer with cuts for Christina Aguilera and Michael Bublé, along with a long track record of major sync placements. His work spans pop, jazz, and television, showcasing both versatility and staying power. My buddy, Jeremy Silver. Thanks for being here, man.
See you.
And our last guest is a Los Angeles native. This vocalist, producer, and songwriter has worked with TXT, Katy Perry, and Robert Glasper, amassing over 1 billion streams worldwide, from Grammy-nominated engineering to composing for major TV networks and brands. His versatility makes him one of the most dynamic creatives in today's music industry. Please welcome Daniel Dávila. Dude, thanks for being here. Did I get it right, or did I fuck it up?
You did. Hey, thanks so much for having me.
I always get so nervous. It's like my biggest fear. Well, thank you to our guests for coming here. This is the episode that I'm kind of a little nervous to do because I got my start in sync. I wasn't like so successful at it. For you guys and our listeners, I was in a band that kind of started because we were making music for sync, and some of those songs just naturally became songs for the band. But it was very short-lived, and sync is probably the part of the music industry I know the least amount about, and it's the most, curious part, like not only because of the money, but I've done a couple like sync opportunities, landed a few here and there, and they're fun. A lot of times I think they're like really freeing for me, where I'm doing songs every day for artists and singer-songwriters, and sometimes writing for like a brief is just like, I don't know, it's like a fun little, like, I feel like I'm in school again, and like doing a thing. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys about all this and ask you questions, but I wanted to ask each of you before we dive in deep, how you guys not really got your start in music, because I'm sure I'm only going to get you guys on here for individual episodes, but let's pertain it to sync. How did you guys kind of get involved and start making those connections in sync? Jeremy, I'll start with you.
So I got started in sync because I started in the music business by working in publishing, and I gravitated towards the sync side of the publishing companies that I was working for. And I was always a songwriter, but I was always fascinated with publishing, which is why I started working at the publishing companies. I knew that music for picture was where it was at, because at that time, iTunes was destroying the album. Albums weren't selling. And this is around the time, not to date myself, but this is around the time of like the OC and Grey's Anatomy, and bands were starting to break. And I was like, this is really interesting. And as a songwriter, I just knew that I needed to know more about this space. So I was working in publishing on the sync side. And to make a very long story short, that's how I got my start on the sync side of this business.
Love that. Em, how about you?
I got my start in sync. It was kind of like a happenstance thing. It's something I knew about. It's something I had written before, while I was starting out, because at the time I was I still am, but like a touring artist, singer songwriter, but like college age and a little bit post college. And I started going on writing trips in LA and like trying to like figure out what was going on. And then I quit sort of music. I took a sabbatical. I felt like I was on this hamster wheel of like making shitty music and touring and making shitty music and touring. And I sold all my stuff. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And I left the country for a year. I remember I was in like a hostel in Vietnam where I was living for a month. And I got like an email from a company that had repped some of my back catalog. And they emailed me that this indie rock track that I had worked on years ago was getting licensed by this big company. And then from there it kind of just took off. And that was kind of like the start of how I got into that world. But it was kind of a discovery that ended up blowing up. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think that happens to so many people where there's some people like Jeremy where it was like, okay, this seems to be a thing. I'm going to go that direction. And there's a lot of people like I would even consider myself in that, even though I didn't stay doing it, where you just kind of like fall into it, where it's like, oh, like these ad agencies, these synchronization companies, whatever you want to call them, licensing companies, they like my music, and they usually, and we're going to talk about this, like keep going back to the same people a lot of the time, because once they know your music, they're like, oh yeah, like Lowen's great music is perfect for this. So it's kind of funny how like people just fall into it. Daniel, how about you, man? Like how did you get your start there?
I had always heard about sync. You kind of hear about it a lot now where people want to get into it. And I started my career as a background singer. I was touring and doing television singing. And so I kind of already had a bit of a background with TV. I was doing, like overdubs for random TV shows and then theme songs, but I had never actually been like the composer for them. But I had known a lot of producers just because they had been hiring me to sing on stuff. And then, after I started engineering a lot, I was working at the beginning of my career in hip hop. I think that the people, the managers, the A&Rs that I was around, they were around a lot of beat makers. And for me, I didn't really make beats, really. Like I wasn't really a beat maker. And so I think it was really just that there were producers that were so much more accomplished than me, but they really kind of they were sticking to a lane. And so when a brief would come up, I think I was really just a bit of an outlier in the hip hop space at first, where they would say, like one of the first things I landed was like an episode of Waffles and Mochi, where it was like, can you outplay a crudité? And Jack Black is like singing with a vegetable. And it was just very random. And for some reason, I got the call of like, we feel like Daniel might be able to do this. And so I felt like I was a bit of an just making different music than the people kind of in my community. And through that, I just kind of started landing things from that process early on. And then it never stopped from there. But I think it was really just because people were like, maybe they just kind of gave me a shot at it. And it worked.
When you say people, like, who do you mean? Like who are these people?
Sorry. It's just like managers or A&Rs or, the sync pub people, like the publishing companies or the sync agencies, those actually came a lot later. It was really just managers or A&Rs that had certain opportunities. And, I'm sure we'll get into this, but you don't necessarily know what a good opportunity is or what a good brief is. Right. And I just kind of decided to say, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to get reps in, even if it's at the cost of losing a lot at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And it's not until you get the reps in that you actually, start developing a sense of what am I landing naturally and what am I naturally good at. And from that point, I think it started as just random kind of kooky music. And now it's kind of become a little bit more mainstream sync for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny, like getting those reps in. I think it's so good for no matter like what kind of music you're making. I got so many reps in for my early days doing sync because one day it would be like, this was like back in like 2013, 2014. It was like, yeah, we basically want Imagine Dragons Radioactive, but we can't afford that. So You're like basically like, okay, well, I've always made like kind of emo music. Now it's forcing me to make like not emo music. And it was like, oh, now we want like Miley Cyrus. Like, and so it was like such an amazing like crash course for me into pushing myself into doing things that I was not comfortable doing. And I was like, well, like if I nail this, I'll get like 5 figures. So like, that's a good thing to like, that's a great positive reinforcement, even though like I didn't get any of them at the time. But it also like what I'm getting to is like, I learned a lot of like Zed was big at the time, and they wanted like a lot of like Zed type tracks, and I learned really quickly like I don't do that. That I don't do. So it was a really great learning experience for me.
Mhm.
So when you guys are a sync brief, right? I know there's sometimes for our listeners here, syncs happen kind of like one of two, three ways, however you want to call it. The first way is just luck, where you just happen to be writing music that someone hears and they're like, oh, this would be perfect in my commercial or my movie, and like that those are the ones you don't plan for, and they're usually the biggest checks too. And then there's opportunities where these TV shows, people who are making commercials are looking for a specific piece of music, and they call them in the industry they call them briefs. And it will say like, "Hey, we're looking for something that's upbeat in this genre. Here's like 2 or 3 references, and here are like some like lyrical concepts we try to hit." Jeremy, I'll start with you. When you get those briefs, what's kind of like, what's your strategy for looking at it and being like, okay, I think this is what I need to do to like nail this brief?
Question, and there's so many ways.
I know. I get it's such an open-ended question,
It's
but
okay. So there's so many ways that these things can happen, and there's different ways in which they'll come in, and that helps me determine sort of really the we're talking about the quality of the brief, like how real is this? You know what I mean? And
right,
luckily, after you've been doing it for a certain amount of time, like hopefully nothing's getting to you if it's complete bullshit. You know what I mean?
right.
And I'll get the negative part of it out of the way first, and I'm sure that my guests can attest to this. Is sometimes you'll get a brief and you're like, this is just a brief that's being sent around to keep some people busy because they don't have stuff to do, and sometimes that's what happens. We don't like those briefs, you know. The way that I will attack something that comes in that I know is real and interesting is first I'll say, do I have anything that's sort of like this already? Okay, if I have something that's sort of like it, who's the artist? Who's the artist on it? Is the artist right? Is the artist going to be right maybe the song is right, but the artist isn't right. Maybe the artist is right. Maybe I have an amazing connection with the right artist who could write something for this show, but we just don't have the right song for it yet. Okay, so how much time do we have? Do we have a month? Do we have a day? These are all things that I start thinking about when I'm looking at a brief. And sometimes I might get a brief and be like, you know what? I have some things that are almost right for it, but it's not perfect, so I'm not going to send it in. Because it's a long game, and you don't want to just send everything for every time you get a brief, because that's a great way to make sure that you don't get the email next time when someone's in a rush. They don't want to get 100 submissions. They want to get a few that are really good that they can use. Another thing that wasn't quite part of your question yet, but affects how I look at these things is, who's the brief coming from? Is it coming from a music supervisor? Is it coming from my publisher? Is it coming from the manager of an artist that I worked with a year ago that heard that I do sync music and they just want to, the brief gets sent around like that sometimes. I don't know if I've answered your question.
No, I mean, you said a lot of great stuff. Something that you said that really caught my ear was not sending things that aren't perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's like thing that I never would have thought to like really say out of my mouth, but I try and do that for like, this is a separate topic, but for like pitch records for, artists out here where it's like, am I going to send 10 songs to an A&R, or I'm going to send like one that like really fits the brief? Because yeah, exactly like you're saying. And of course these like music supervisors have kind of the same thing. I don't know that we might go back to that later. That's really interesting. Daniel, how about you, man? Like when you get some of these like briefs, like what are you in the creative process, like kind of trying to do to like hit certain things, or like, not make it too dumb and say, what are some strategies you like to use?
I think reading briefs is kind of its own skill. I usually kind of smile and laugh when I read briefs a lot of the time, to be honest, because You can tell pretty quickly after a while. Like, I got a brief the other day that says, they say budget is good. Again, who is they? What is good?
Yeah.
You'll get stuff like that where you just, all right, I think I guess I'll kind of go off of what Jeremy was saying with some of the mistakes that I made early on, or some things that I just didn't know, which is that when you get this brief, there's a euphoria that comes with like $100,000 in an email.
Right.
You're like, oh my God, like that is crazy, right? And you start realizing if a company or a television show or an ad or whatever, if they have $100,000, the song already exists. So it's like, or there's likeness attached to that song. Like it's like there's a certain budget that can go to somebody for a job well done. And then there's another budget that goes to a job well done off of a song that's already performed, and they don't have to do any analytics or riff it off of people because people know the song. And if they have the budget to just go get the thing, then they're just going to go get the thing. Right. So it was really good early on to just do them because you start learning what you're actually good at making and whether you're good at making it fast and good, or whether, it's not worth doing at all. But I think that's just my first point is I usually read like what they have in terms of resources and how quickly they need it. Because if it's a really high number in a really short timeline, the song exists. I think the other thing that I do is just after a while, you get better at realizing where you have an edge on people. And, I think Saturday mornings for a long time were like, the weekends were the time that I would spend 3 hours in the morning just making things for fun. A lot of the time, like Jeremy was saying, that's when you realize you already have something for that brief and you just made it. So it's an investment in the time later where you're going to get that email where you have something and you're not ideating for the first 4 or 5 hours. You just have it already. And I think the more time that you just put into your catalog and sticking to the things that work for you, the more you're actually going to realize that briefs, you'll know what's right for you and what you can actually do. And I think probably the third one is a big consideration for me is, are they open to having a lot of different writers who are on different publishing companies? Right. Because
that's
sometimes
such a big one.
Yeah, it's a big one. There's a lot of different agreements where they want to buy something out, or they just want to have the approval so quickly that it would be really difficult to go through pub companies that now need 72 hours to respond. And frankly, if you don't have an indie person who can do it at that level, like there's a lot of considerations over how many teams are involved in this placement. And usually if it's a short timeline and there's a lot of teams involved, that's something that I kind of stray away from as well. So I think I'm more talking about the things that I'm avoiding, but my approach in general is more, does this feel like something that I could actually do and make well and make a really good impression every time I send it, regardless of the outcome.
I mean, but that, it's like you and Jeremy are saying the same thing where it's like, I only want to send high quality shit out. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean like you're not like still trying to make the thing for the brief. Like, would you say, just really quick, yes or no answer, but would you say that like, if you get a brief and you're like, all right, I'll try and make it and you don't nail it, are you just like, no, I'm not going to send it? Or do you still like to like take the shot?
I don't send it anymore.
You learn. Jeremy, what about you, man?
I'm gonna send it. If it's it's like I've heard you say it before on this podcast, which is every song is a business card, right?
Yeah.
And it's true of sync. It's so true of sync.
Yeah. No, it's something like, I used to just be a lot more just because I did sync earlier in my career and I would just like send shit out all the time to be like, yep, this is great. And now it's like, I would probably be a lot more like conservative and be like, okay, I'm glad I tried this and I have this in my back pocket for something else, Emily, with sync with you, are you, I meant to ask you this earlier, but are you kind of like doing a lot more writing to briefs now? Or is it just kind of like they know that the music you make, for lack of a better term, is like very sync friendly, like you make really cool music in my opinion, and it works for certain kind of opportunities. Like what's kind of like your process here?
Yeah. So I would say for me, like sync, though outwardly it might not appear that way, like sync is the backbone of like my entire like business. It's like how I afford to make my records as an artist. It's how I afford to hire the people I want to like hire my dream mixers for my own shit. Like it's how I own a house, how I like, like it's the backbone of everything. And like I have written 4 briefs, but like the song that sparked everything for me was a collaboration with another writer and producer. And he and I have a duo called Midnight Riot. And our project, it just kind of started doing its thing. And when I moved back to the States, I didn't know anything. All I knew is I needed to move to Nashville, be around people I could work with, and be back in the States so I could kind of feed, I think when you're like a broke musician for so long, when something works and you're like, oh, like I can breathe, let me just feed this for a moment. We basically, like, we would get briefs, and I did write 2 briefs, but for the most part, we were just putting out what we did, kind of like what Daniel was saying. It's like what I've learned about sync and what I've seen with a lot of people who like want to get into it is like it's a cycle. Like I see, like you chase and you're like, I want to find this sound and I got to like chase this trend or whatever. But what you really learn is you kind of have to just know, like anything, what is your thing? Like, what are you so good at? And just pour gasoline on that shit. Like, so we would just make a lot. It's like, it was very high energy. And at the time, it was like popping off in the ad world. So we would just make an EP basically every quarter, like 20, 25 new songs every single year for like years. But while that was happening, I also have other collaborations, and also, like Daniel mentioned, like other people who are free and clear. Like I'm not published. I've never been published, but publishers invite me to their camps because they know I'm like, can do the sync thing as a producer. I could run the session. I could also be on the tracks. I can sing. I'm like the jack of all trades in the room that they can kind of put in and like be with writers who might not be as great at writing real songs that will also crush it at sync. And so I think I've tended to work with people who are also kind of have less when landing things. So like if I'm going to get into a collaboration with someone, I want to make sure that it's like very like easy, like clean, because there's already so many hurdles for the right song to fit the right thing, that the smoother that can be, the better. So I have written for briefs and I've scored. I just did a North Face campaign. Like I scored the music for it and did the voiceover and everything. But like same, like sometimes I get briefs in and I'm like, they don't know what they want. Like I'm gonna tell them what they want. Like because I think they know what they want, but I've done it. I've yet to land something from a brief. I've just built I built a huge catalog and I kept feeding it. Yeah.
I think that's like kind of what I was eventually getting to as well, where it's like I do think that was that third way, kind of like the first way, where it's like you just happen to make music that is syncable, and like you're saying, like you just like keep writing and making music and building up your catalog, and if once you have hundreds of songs and you have to like know your catalog pretty well, then you're like, oh yeah, this like sync brief, like they're looking for something that of like my genre of music that I make with this lyrical content. It's like sick. I got 3 songs and this one is perfect. The other thing that you brought up that I was gonna ask you guys about, making projects around sync. In the industry, they call it like sync projects, right? But I think it's because, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but like it seems like a lot of these, whatever you want to call them, music supervisors, they want artists, bands, even if like they're quote unquote not real. Would you say, like, Jeremy, what's your take on that?
I think it's changed a lot it's changed so much that I think it's actually changed back in a way. I've only been really in one, I guess what you could call a sync project. It was myself and another female artist, and we were doing sort of like a she and him type, sound. We got a bunch of syncs, and we also played shows and made a couple EPs, and that was really all that we wanted to do with it. But at a certain point, the market got so saturated with sync projects, and I think, quite frankly, a lot of music supervisors were like, you're not fooling anybody with this. You throw up an Instagram account, you have 35 followers, or you have 10,000 bots following you, and you have one song on Spotify, Carrot 1000. Like, this is not a real artist project. And at the end of the day, it's always project dependent. It's like, does the music work for the project? Do they need to have this song in their campaign or in the show? Odds are, if they love the music, they don't care if it's a real artist or a fake artist, or if it just works. Again, it's project dependent. So it's always going to matter what's important to them. In an ad, it's completely different from a film. There's another thing that I'm sure we were going to get to anyway, but when we're talking about sync projects, is a big like sort of unlock for me at some point in my career was realizing just music supervisors are fans of great music. Full stop. To treat the music supervisor as if they are just sort of a means to an end is to really like discount their role. You're really selling yourself short when you're trying to create music, whether it's custom for a project or just if you're trying to keep sync in mind. If you're skipping over the fact that the music supervisor that you're eventually pitching to is most likely a huge music fan and loves great music. And I think people do themselves a disservice when they forget that.
Yeah. Daniel, what about you? Like, are you just like kind of not focusing on the project aspect of it? You're just making music, or like, what do you like to do?
No, I don't do projects at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole let me make an artist project around this sync project and it'll have a shelf life of 6 months and all that stuff. I think that was really came up during like the Shazam period, where people were like, they were watching a TV show and there'd be the end scene of Grey's Anatomy and they'd be like, what is this song? And I just think now, I don't know if, and it happens, and it used to actually become, you translated to streams. Like there were some projects that really broke and would get 5-10 million streams after their song premiered on an episode of TV. And I just think that market kind of became oversaturated. The only successful, I'm doing this temporary artist project to make it look like I'm taking it seriously, are usually for catalogs that I've seen become successful. Like if you're part of a larger catalog for a label or a publishing company, like they'll do that. It could be, I've never done it. I just know that some people have had success when they do it. It more has to do with the reps. Like they come out with a lot of music and they stick to it. And even if they did it by creating a project, they usually end up liking the project. So for me, if I were to make an artist project that would be sync friendly, it would probably just be because it happens to be that way. And because I actually want to put my face on it. And because I would be really proud across all the things that I work on to say I also have this really cool project and I'm really passionate about it. And I would probably take the biggest risk on a sound that I think isn't being synced that much right now, that I think I would do better than most, and probably just take a bet on that. And worst comes to worst, I'm really proud of something. And best case scenario, it becomes the next sync project.
Yeah. So we're all going to like make like a metal polka band.
Yeah, I really love, like, my parents are born and raised in Puerto Rico, and I love Latin music, and it just like doesn't come up that much for syncs. And when it is, it's like heavy, like reggaeton music, and there's so much more to it. And I think hopefully there could be a wave where I could, actually play real Latin percussion on something. But if not, then I'll be happy I released the project because it's something I would have made anyway. I think a really good example of that is like a Remy Wolf who just made music that's just was crazy and cool, and it happened to be syncable, but she's not the kind of person who ever would have made a project for an Apple ad. That's just not who she is.
No. Yeah. I think what it is with like, sync projects, the brief little bit of advice I've given people, because it happened with me, is that like sometimes these things just happen and it's a project that happens to be syncy. But also I think what's nice about calling something an artist project or a band is that I'm a firm believer that limitations or boundaries on when creating is a good thing. And if you're like in with a person that you're like, oh, we had this like sync project, and like Jeremy, like you were saying, like, oh yeah, like I did this like she and him thing. And so to me, like those rules are like, oh, female singer and guy sings every once in a while, and like we're only playing real instruments. Right. And I think like those are sometimes good boundaries when you're like, okay, and we're going to make an EP like this and we'll have this just kind of like ready to go for sync opportunities. I think like something like that is really, really good, especially for, artists or songwriters who are signed to like publishing companies where like, hey, I have this whole EP or this whole album. It's just me and this other person. We own the masters. So everything is like pre-cleared, ready to go. Like whatever you guys want to do it for, and to me, that's what publishing companies and are really looking for. They want, like, I forget who was saying it earlier, but like they want things that are just like, oh, okay, we can clear this in 20 minutes if need be. Because that's just like kind of how it goes sometimes, where an opportunity comes up for, a Love is Blind episode that's dropping tomorrow and they need like a piece of music to like fit in there really quickly. Like those are good opportunities to, and they're real. And that's, speaking of publishing and master, a lot of people listening to this might not know what those are. I'm going to give the quick and dirty explanations of that as best I can. Publishing is like the songwriting of the song, right? Where I always use the Beatles' Yesterday as an example. It's the most covered song of all time. John Lennon and Paul McCartney will always own the songwriting, the publishing to that song. I always say that songwriting can be like physically written down on sheet music and lyric. Master is that specific recording of that song. Let's say, me and Jeremy decided to start a sing project and we're like, you know what, we're only doing Beatles covers. Right? that would actually be a good project. But but for the most part, John Lennon and Paul McCartney are always going to own the publishing, and Jeremy and I would always own like the master, because we own like those recordings. And in pop music and whatever, the master is usually owned by like the label, and then the artist has some, producers have some. Hopefully we're giving songwriters more of that master. That was my shorthand for our listeners here. So when we're getting paid for syncs, it, for the most part, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's 50-50 usually, where it's like 50% of the fee is going to the publishing, writing, and then 50% is going to the master owners, right? Am I correct on that, guys? Correct me if I'm wrong here.
The vast majority of the time.
Yeah. So when we're saying, let me rephrase that. So we usually get that upfront fee, right? When they're like, okay, cool, we love the song, we're going to pay you this much upfront. There's also back end performance royalties, depending on if it's synced in movie, TV, online commercial, whatever. Emily, I'll start with you. On your like ASCAP statements and your publishing statements, where do you see most of that back end royalty money coming in from?
So at the very beginning, I wasn't seeing anything, and I was very confused because at the time I had probably like 10, 20 like national or like global ads from like different brands out, and I was like, what the fuck's going on? And then I learned, this is crazy, I didn't know this, so if anyone, this is very niche, but if anyone who sees this happens to be landing commercial syncs and doesn't know what's going on with their royalties, and because I'm not with a publisher, I had to, at this time, I didn't even have an admin deal. So I was doing it all by myself. So you have to submit, at least with BMI, a jingle form. So it's not, they don't just start tracking your song as if it's on radio or if it's in a movie or something. Like specifically, there's something with ads where you have to like ping them and like notify them. And you have to go to this website called Competitrack, and you have to look up your commercial, and your commercial has a code tied to that, and you have to put that code into this jingle form and like let them know to search. Crazy. Once that was all in, there was, that changed the game. But yeah, like right. most of the royalties I saw for me on the back end, because even though I have landed some in-show things, most of my sync has been in the ad world. And if you're landing something on the national level, yeah, like it can be incredible, especially if they're renewing. Or for example, I had like a Honey Bunches of Oats ad that had like several different edits, and each of those count as a different type of a commercial. And some of those edits were on Telemundo, so it was like also in Spanish. And so it's just like, and they're airing on all these different networks, and it's happening for 6 months, and oh my God, they're going to renew for another year. And you're like, okay, like, so it can be very fruitful. Yeah. Like
really quick, just to interrupt really quickly for our listeners. So, usually when you get like an ad placement like that, they usually have like term lengths where it's like, okay, we're buying the rights to like use this for like 90 days, 6 months, a year, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of the times within those contracts, they have preset like, okay, if we're going to renew this for another 6 months, this is what we're going to pay you. So they don't have to like come back and renegotiate. It's just so it makes it quicker. We're like, hey guys, we're going to re-up this. And you're like, cool, send over the money. So that's what Emily's talking about when it's like, oh, they renewed the thing. It's like usually a negotiated like term that was already in the initial sync.
It's not sexy, right? Like it's not like having a number one at radio and like you know what I mean? It's not like but it's sexy in a different way where you're like, okay, like I can like be a musician and like live and write songs and pour into that as well. So
it's really great money, especially when you also own on the master side as well. I mean, most of those campaigns, they're 50-50 split between the publishing and the master royalty, but then most of those like royalties that we're talking about coming in from ASCAP and BMI and whatever, those are all on your writer side and your publishing side. And like I've been lucky enough to have I guess like 2 national ad campaigns, and it's just like you're like, oh, like sick, they showed this on Monday Night Football, sick. And it's because it's usually, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like viewer based as well, like depending on how many people watched the commercial or watched the TV show when it happened, like you'll get more of a royalty or less of a royalty. So yeah, it's if you like, you just like get like an ad on like a rinky dinky random MTV show that doesn't get a lot of views, it's not gonna be that much. But if you're like, hey, this was on NASCAR, like sick, like there's good money there. Daniel, what about you? Like you're mostly doing, you said like more like custom things. Like, how does that look like on the back end for you?
So it really depends. I do a lot of custom work. So it's either like theme songs, or I don't even know if this would be considered sync, but I do like mnemonics for corporations. So it could be considered sync depending on where it lands.
It's
right?
not sync.
Yeah, but they kind of can be in the same world. So a lot of the time with with theme songs, if it's on a network, it's a lot easier to get paid. With a couple of the ad stuff, it can be very confusing because now of streaming and like Hulu, and then whether they're choosing to, I've done some national campaigns for cruise lines, beer companies, stuff like that. And you end up realizing that they actually won't air it on regular forms of television. Like they'll only air it on like a YouTube ad, which is funny because the reality is that how do people consume everything now? It's coming from like the streaming ads. But the streaming ads are very different from if something just airs on Fox for 40 episodes and you have a theme song, right? Because that's really easy to track. Yeah, whenever it's been custom for brands and they really want to have, it's not like a song that already existed. So they want to have sometimes the opportunity to just purchase the publishing from you. And then no matter what, you keep your writer share.
Right.
So there are cases where you can do that. And a lot of the time when you're getting your start, that's actually a really great way to make money because you're still kind of getting your writer statement to bring in some income, but you don't own the publishing because that company that bought it from you or the corporation now owns your publishing from that. But a lot of the time, those will be a lot bigger fees up front because they are just basically saying, we don't want to deal. We're going to put this on so many things, and some of it's going to be inside of our offices. Some of it's going to be, it's just so random that they just want to have ownership over it. And they want to feel like they're kind of the label or the publishing. They want to feel like they actually own that piece and that nobody else can have it. And it's very exclusive to their sound. And that is usually in the form of a larger, like substantially larger buyout up front. And then finding the money later can actually be very difficult. For me, it's been a lot of custom pieces like TV, trailer promos, stuff like that. That's just been this edit's very hard to cut to. Can you make it feel percussive? I kind of am known a bit as a problem solver. Like if you just can't really figure out what to do on something, I get hired for it. And that has been kind of the beginning. That was the beginning of my career. Just, we don't know who else to call for this, and maybe you can try it out. And that was a really great way to get started. And
that
now
seems like a very like AI safe job, because like AI is so bad at problem solving, and I feel like
like, can you make this remix? It's a cat animation thing, and we want the synth to sound like the sound of a meow. Like, figure that out. You're like, all right, I can definitely figure that out. And for me, I like to pride myself, and I feel like I've always leaned more on the creative side than like the technical mechanical, So that's been a good way of kind of going about the syncs, but everything else I do now is definitely more in the traditional
Yeah.
sense that Emily was
Are
talking about.
are you signed to a publishing company or you're unpublished right now?
I'm
Self-published.
unpublished. Yeah, I've always been self-published
Yeah.
for my career. I do
Are you?
on. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I was gonna say, are you using any companies or anything to help collect some of those royalties, or how do you go about collecting some of those?
Honestly, I still do it all myself.
Damn.
I still do it all myself, which I could probably change. But as I decided I want to stop doing it myself, honestly, things just picked up faster and faster. And going through that process has just been, you really want to be selective over who you make decisions with. And
Hmm.
I do for some stuff, which is unrelated for any international records that I do. I do have sub publishers that I go through or just admin deals. So I always have those avenues when I want to collect on something that would be very difficult for somebody who's self-published to collect on, but I'm still kind of just chipping away at it. And I think it's more because I enjoy it. I think at
Right.
the part where as soon as you stop enjoying it, I like the business part of the music industry. I really
Right.
enjoy it. Similar to Jeremy, where he was, at a publishing company, right? I enjoy it a lot. I think a lot of people would have gotten some kind of deal or help probably 5 years ago if they were in my position.
Yeah. God bless you. I would have done it right away because I can't stand that part of it. I
Yeah,
hate it so much.
yeah.
I like. I don't even want to like deal with my finance, that business management. I'm just like, just fucking do it. I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
Uh, Jeremy, what about you? You're signed, correct, to Pulse, and what does that look like for you? Like being a published songwriter, obviously they're collecting most of your royalties, but I'm assuming you have like what other kind of back end royalties you have coming in? Tell me like I'm someone who doesn't know anything.
Well, there's obviously the writer side, and then with respect to the publishing deal, I mean, there's always, well, going back to sort of what Emily was touching on the differences between royalties that get generated for ads versus television versus films. I can tell you, in film, in the United States, songwriters do not make royalties off theatrical exhibition of their songs. That's your song being played in a movie that's being played in a movie theater. That's not true outside the US. So if you're lucky enough to have your song in a movie that gets played around the world, you will make money off performance for performances in movie theaters outside the US. That's been a nice royalty stream for me because I've been lucky enough to have some songs in movies that do well overseas. Television has changed a lot. Broadcast network television can still be very lucrative. Streaming, not so much.
Nope, it's insane.
Ads, if you can, as Emily mentioned, you need to get your PRO on it. I like to let ASCAP know as soon as I know. They're operating 9 months behind anyway. So I like to let the PRO know as soon as I have that ad code, watch out for this. I remind them all the time. Still is not a perfect system.
So for our listeners, what do you mean when you say I like to let them know? Like what's that process?
You contact your rep at ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, or GMR if you're a member of GMR. You say, I have this ad coming out. Here is the ad code. Maybe you know the day that the ad is going to start running, and you submit it through their system, and then you follow up with a phone call, and then
Okay.
you just make sure they are on it. And
Is that not something that like publishers are doing or should be doing? It's something that you feel that you as a writer, you're like, I gotta let ASCAP know so I make sure I get my money.
I think it's a team effort. Like I am not the kind of songwriter, or let's say I'm not the kind of signed songwriter that thinks that it's just my publisher's job to do all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the knowledge that I had going into my publishing deal, obviously having some experience in sync and getting syncs is frankly a huge part of why I was able to get signed. And I'm happy to continue that work with them. My advice to songwriters who are signed that want to do well in sync is to be a part of that process with your publisher. I think you'll find that a lot more doors open up to you that way. With the other types of royalties that can be made from sync, I'm a member of SAG. So if I'm doing a custom job,
That's a big one. Yep.
for ads, and I'm singing on it, that's a royalty stream that songwriters or producers, vocalists should be aware of.
On top of that too, if you're able to get that and you make like that minimum, like you can get on SAG's health insurance too, which is obviously huge.
Yeah. I've done ads where I'm also a member of AFM Local 47, which is the musicians union in LA. I also was doing a lot of ads that were based out of New York. So I'm a member of the musicians union in New York, and you have to stay up on these things, but there are royalty streams there that everyone should be aware of. In certain cases, that's different than, say, if a company wants to license your song. That's not a SAG type contract.
Yeah, no, it's just kind of like it comes with getting your song placed. It's like, I've never had the opportunity to go to SAG, unfortunately, because I'm not a singer. Oh, I'm a singer, but nothing with my voice has been synced, unfortunately. Of course, there's always the ones where it's like, not your voice wasn't on that record. And you're like, come on. But I even had one where my voice was on it, and they're like, we want all voices taken out except for the main vocal. And it's like, yeah, it's like, cool. Like, way to take some money out of my pocket, but I'm still going to do it.
I would just follow that up with, because we're talking about songwriters in publishing deals, or because it's a producer podcast, we'll talk about producers in publishing deals, right? If you can, every deal is different, every producer is different. If you can retain control of your masters, that's a good thing.
Yeah. It's really nice when you have like certain things, and like even as a producer, I used to do it more often. I've just stopped because I just don't have like the bandwidth to do it. But I used to get back in the day like a lot of like smaller syncs, but that would add up. Whereas like, not we all, but most of us are making like beats every day or just having some random instrumentals, and sometimes like those work. Like I still get like random checks. I have like a couple like random instrumentals that Catfish uses all the time, that MTV show. And like I'll get like, yeah, right. Like I'll get like, random $50, $100, $200 here and there from those. All just because I was like, I gave someone, 12 years ago, like, hey, here's like 20 instrumentals that I had just like lying around. Like, do what you want with them. Kind of a thing. One of those instrumentals became the theme songs of the podcast. That's kind of a sync, right? I guess my own. Hey gang, I just wanted to pop in here to let you know that the best way you can help this podcast grow is to rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. It tells the algorithm to push our show to other listeners so we can grow, and it's one of, if not the best way to help support this podcast. So if you wouldn't mind, take a second to rate this podcast. Sharing it with your friends would be amazing too. All right, back to the pod. Speaking of the business side, I want to maybe do a short little segment here on what are some red flags that we've seen in sync opportunities or sync contracts that you're like, I don't know about this one. I don't know if that's something I can agree to. Yes, Daniel, go ahead, my friend.
Biggest red flag for me is whenever you get an email that says, we don't know what we want, we're just looking for vibes. Because a lot of the time you think, oh, okay, well, maybe, because Emily was saying earlier, sometimes you know what they want, you just have to show them. That opinion comes with a lot of conviction and a lot of experience. But when you're starting, that can be, we don't know what we want. And as soon as you send what we want, we're going to send it to the person we know can do it better or that we have a personal relationship with. So you want to be really careful with when people aren't very specific, because there are some times where so much of sync work, and most of it actually is speculative, to the point where you never know. You want to be more careful and trepidatious when you're sending an idea that it could just be remade,
Yeah. Has that happened to you, or do you feel like it's happened to you?
Yeah, at very large scales.
Yeah. Okay. Fun.
Yeah.
Super fun.
It's happened to me where it's been big video game theme songs and the thing comes out and it's pretty much what I made. To a point where it's not close enough, right? And there's a whole other conversation to say about what's close enough and what's not. But there are definitely specialists at making things close enough, or not close enough, right? And so sometimes you can be contributing to the ideation process that you don't get compensated for, and you just want to be really mindful of that early on. And sometimes it can be good because we talked earlier about getting reps in. There's something to be said about getting reps in, but sometimes when people don't know what they want, they really just want to hear it from somebody else and then get it done somewhere else.
Yeah, I think, being a producer, you always have to understand that there's two phases, right? The first phase is I work extremely differently now than how I used to work, where it was like so much of when you're younger or when you're first starting out is just, we all say like, say yes to anything, say yes to everything. You just like, got to do it. You got to get your name out there. Exactly what you're saying, like getting your reps in, like every opportunity is an opportunity to like hone your skills. But exactly like you're saying now, where it's like, I only have so many opportunities I can do. And I only have so much time on my plate. And you have to really be choosy with what you decide to do and how you spend your time. And I think exactly what you're saying, like looking for things like that. Jeremy, Emily, I don't know if you just want to raise your hand. Do you have any like red flags and like sync contracts or briefs that you're like, nope, not for me? Oh, you pointed to Emily?
I've never gotten a red flag brief. I've gotten a brief with like my songs referenced, and I've been like, that's a joke. But like, I think a red flag and like maybe an agreement would be, obviously there's like, if the split is a complete joke, or if it's if it's not in the artist's favor, obviously that's a red flag. If it's there's anything remotely resembling verbiage about ownership of the master without any exchange, you know what I mean? If there's anything that has anything to do with ownership when it's a licensing thing, I would say that's a red flag, and I've maybe only seen that a couple times.
Contractual terms that I'm just a little wary, like it's always certain combinations of words scream, all media in perpetuity is broad set of terms if there's not a very, very large number attached to it. And some people just don't consider, sometimes the broadness of the terms that are being asked for. All media worldwide in perpetuity. It's like, what are we talking about here, guys? You guys need to figure out what you really need this for. Is sort of where I start to go when I see those words, unless there's a massive number attached to it. The red flag that I thought of when you asked about red flags is a little bit more from a producer perspective. And I don't know if this has happened to you guys, but I get asked from time to time, hey, we just signed this artist. Do you want to work with them? We think they could do some great stuff for Sync. Kind of a red flag. Yeah. Because if you just sign that artist and I'm being asked, I always think of it like, it's like someone that just bought a new car and they're like, hey, do you want to take it out for a spin? It's like, no, I don't really want to take it out for a spin because I only have so much time. And if it doesn't work, I wasted a day, maybe 2 days, sort of so that I can then report back to you about this new person that you just signed. And so for me, that is sometimes a red flag.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the music industry. Everyone's asking for favors and just like seeing what they can get out of you. Go ahead.
I have one more point to make, just because it kind of ties into for people who might not know about what sync agencies typically take for landing you a sync, right?
Yeah.
It's different if you're with a pub company, but if you're self-published, a lot of the time the industry standard has become 50% cuts for when you're starting out. It's become 50%. The reason why that happened was because of
50%, where's that 50% coming out of?
So it's 50% of the entire deal. So they're almost acting like an agent. So it's out of the master and the publishing, right? And the reason why that happened is because of the conversation we had earlier. Artists would break from having syncs. So you would say, okay, well, I'm giving you 50% of the deal, but I'm getting 10 million streams out of this, and it's also helping me take off. And so, like, what's 50% of the upfront deal if it's 10 grand, if this is going to end up, changing the trajectory of my career? So that's kind of why sync companies could start demanding way higher percentages than is industry standard anywhere else across the board. And over time, as that kind of got diluted, the percentages that sync companies demand to do that job has not gone down because it's now become the standard. Very similar to how Netflix, when they were, or streaming platforms, were trying to look for incentivized royalty rates to get their companies started. And now that they're multi-billion-dollar companies, they now have the lobbying power to not change the percentages of the royalties that are paid out to you. It's the same thing with Spotify, right? So on now there is just so that people can be mindful and careful of this, there is now a secondary argument being made that I'm starting to see with some people who are starting out in sync, where now those same sync companies are writing in their contracts that they also take 50% of your publishing share for not having actually done anything to the record other than getting the sync done. And they'll try to claim that because they gave you the idea for the song that now they're part of the publishing, or they can have exclusive ownership over syncing that. And I just wanted to say the history of how that happened and how we're getting to a point now where, those contracts can become a little bit overindulgent and lopsided.
Yeah, it's crazy. When I was started doing this, I had a kind of a red flag with the company that we were able to like negotiate out of. But it was when I kind of like said it earlier, where we were making music that felt like it was a band, but it was like very syncable. And we were talking to a couple of different publishing companies, and there was this one publishing company where they were like, "Oh yeah, we'd love to like rep these," and we were like, "Yeah, cool, great." And like I don't remember like what like they were saying like they want to take the fee. It wasn't 50%. I remember that. But
Mm-hmm.
what they wanted to do, which to me was like, don't like that. They're like, oh, if we get it placed, then we become the publisher of that song.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, oh, no. Like, like you're not taking any risks then. You're just like, oh yeah, we'll just pitch it out, and if we happen to get a place, now we own it. Versus like, why people sign to publishing companies, like, okay, well, you're giving me a chunk of change, like you're taking a risk and you're giving me an advance to then own the publishing. So that to me was like my red flag that I had always like kind of stuck with, where I saw that, and like we didn't even have a lawyer at the time yet, but I was just like, that don't seem right. Like I don't like how that feels. Something I wanted to talk about too, like, kind of, it's along the same lines of this like 50% thing, is I feel like, and I haven't been doing sync as much as you guys, but I feel like the past like 10, 15 years, we've seen a real race to the bottom in terms of like, Jeremy's face says it all, but like in terms of fees and what, I just remember like when I was doing it like 10 plus years ago, that like some, music in this type of commercial got this much. And then I have like buddies doing that same kind of thing. I'm like, oh, that's like 10% of what I was getting. Jeremy, you're making face here. Like do you feel like that's been happening over the last like 10, 15 years?
I think, yeah, I mean, of course,
Right.
as more and more um, really production music companies sprouted up, and their business more or less became based on undercutting fees from some of the major publishers, the independent publishers, the mid-sized publishers, and even some of those third-party sync licensing companies, the production music houses that just built up massive catalogs and went after a lot of the agencies, trailer houses, movie studios, and just basically saying whatever you're paying for music, we'll do it for less. Yeah, I sort of have seen that for the certainly for the last 5-10 years, where I sort of kind of think of it like it's becoming like the 99-cent store
Mm-hmm.
uh, of music. And not to be too negative about it, but sometimes I think, because we all talk to people all the time who are still like, hey, like, so sync, I want to get into sync. And it's like, this has been going on for 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
And what I kind of joke about sometimes is sync is like, I make the analogy that it's like a pool that everyone has already pissed in, and there's a line around the block to get into it. And
That's
it's
funny. That's really funny.
and and there a lot, mostly there's been a downward trend in fees, but that is always, there are always exceptions. Like there are still healthy fees, major brands at major
Mm-hmm.
ad agencies that are doing major ad buys, well-known recognizable songs can still command healthy sync fees, and that hasn't really changed. Yeah, it's gone down a little bit when you look at the
I
stream.
think it's like what I'm saying. It's like it's a lot of those like more like obviously the high end ones. Those have always been up there because like brands will pay for like bigger songs. They're just like going to do that. But it's like those like lower end, like, oh yeah, we want a song in this like random like very small commercial, or like very specific opportunity. I've seen those go down. My theory on it is like with any industry, right? Where it's like there's any creative industry rather. There's always someone where it's like, oh well, I'll do that for that much. Like I have no money, so like of course I'll do that for that much. And because music is so much easier to make with technology, they're just able to like eat up those opportunities. I think hopefully one day, I guess it's not really a songwriters union would help this. It would in a sense, whichever one I'm going to mention. Sona, please join Sona. But I want one day for there to be like a producers union where it's like kind of like how actors are, where it's like, guys, we don't work for less than this for like this opportunity. Like this is just the standard, and we don't work for it just like kind of keeps everyone in like a box in like a good way. Daniel, Emily, either you guys got something to say about like maybe this race to the bottom? Have you been seeing that over the past couple of years?
I don't know over the last couple of years because I sold my catalog a couple of years ago.
There you go.
So I can't even look. Like I might have a heart attack if I look. But like yeah, I sold everything. I sold my masters, I sold my pub, I sold everything in the longest. And like Daniel, I'm a bit of like, it's like my Achilles heel, but it's also like one of the things that has probably helped me, but it's also it pulls me from the creative sometimes, is that I am really good at the other side of it and I kind of enjoy it. I'm a bit of a nerd, and so like that whole sale process was 10 months of you just go cross-eyed. You're just like, it's crazy, and
Yeah.
handing over assets and everything. So I don't know, and I've been rebuilding my catalog since, and have landed a couple smaller things, but
Yeah.
I've been like out of the game, like in the way I was
Right.
for 2 years. So I can't.
Right. You just
speak.
like
can't
they're like,
speak.
hey, this happened.
I was just like, it seems like this is plateauing, so I'm just gonna sell. No,
Yeah.
I was just the opportunity came, and my life was a transition, and I have a little one, and it was perfect timing, and it was like the right partner. So I can't speak to truly if fees are
Yeah.
going down, but I'm sure in some aspects it's a bit of a race to the bottom. Like you know what I mean? Someone's gonna undercut somebody with something. But it happens in sync. It happens in everything. It's just there are always going to be people
It's the
who respect the like the essence of like what we're all standing for kind of a thing.
Right.
So I think it's probably just always going to happen, but I
Yeah.
can't speak to it.
Nate, I didn't do listener questions because I've had a crazy fucking week. Do you have any questions you want to ask our guests here?
The only thing I really had, because I think the production company aspect really touched on what I was going to ask, but I guess from a person independent, coming from that perspective, because I've worked with people in that sync space, and a lot of it's just been production companies that run the town on opportunities. And so if you're an indie person trying to go around that and trying to build connections with supervisors and sync agents outside of those production company ways, what is the scene like now, and what's the best way to start building those genuine connections and try to circumnavigate the whole production company monopoly that feels like, at least in Sydney, is what's happening? I don't know what it's like in LA, but that's just something that I'd like to get your thoughts on as well.
Daniel, what about you, man? I feel like you're like self-published. Like you might have like a good answer to this.
Yeah, I'm self-published. I get this question a lot from kind of younger producers. I'm also adjunct at USC, so I get a lot of the "how do I get started" questions. And I think when you're, and Emily said this too, the kind of jack of all trades thing is really, really great to have that reputation. But you have to have that reputation because you met so many people that all met you for a different skill set that you were good at, and then they all started connecting the dots. So I think if you go into it and you just say, I'm going to be a sync producer, I don't think most people know what that means. And I think what they mean is, I don't know what this music is for, so therefore I think it's for sync. And that is just a very misled, I don't know, it's just not really correct. Like, sync music has really great integrity, and just because there are some different rules to it and what works doesn't mean that you can't make really great sync music. And I think where people sometimes go wrong is they just want to have the same quality, quantity, and just output as a lot of these production companies. And really where you're going to get started is by having one standout song that makes people pay attention to you. And you really just have to The same question that we're all talking about now, what am I really good at that makes me different? That through line never changes from when you're starting to when you're, at higher levels. Of course, you become more adaptable and you can do more genres just through getting reps in and practice. But the answer of the through line or the question of that through line is always going to be what kind of sets me apart. And if you don't have this catalog of 15 different genres and all the sync music and all these placements, then really just dedicate your time to something that you feel like you enjoy, and that should, that diving into one a high quantity and quality of something really good and pinpointing it will probably get you on the map faster than just kind of spraying and praying.
Dude, I love that. I think too, like even Nate, because like I know you, like someone like you, where Nate has a really great artist project, and you're pretty much like writing and producing everything yourself. And like I was saying earlier, a lot of like publishers are like, "Oh, that's good. Like this guy owns 100% of everything, and great voice, really great songwriting." That's like a really good first step in. And this is a question I wanted to ask our guests here, but when you're first starting out, like not being published, so many people hit me up. They're like, "Yeah, I submit to like sync licensing companies." Like, but like, what's like the real first step that you feel you should take to like get your music heard by these companies to get them placed? It's that's not a question that I can answer. So I'm curious if any of you guys have any advice for that.
Just to piggyback on that, is the cold emailing and cold calling approach the thing to go? Is it going to random events is the thing to go? Where is it? What's the landscape like now? Because I know maybe the cold emailing might have been something that happened early on, but I'm sure you guys probably get thousands of emails. And so sifting through that would be a headache with all the work you have to do. So just piggybacking onto that as well.
Yeah.
Just be interesting to see what the landscape's like.
I just to finish off onto what Daniel was saying.
Yeah.
I think another great way I get asked this question a lot too, how do I get into it? I always tell people try and find a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many different ways to do that. And to what you're talking about, Nate, yeah, go to some events, go to the ASCAP Expo, go to shows, find people that are doing it at a high level and see if they need assistance at the studio, or in my case, I came in on the business side and met a lot of people in that world. There are definitely ways to meet people. I think another mistake that people make is they're just starting out and they want to talk to the president of the company.
Yeah.
That's not who you need to, just like how with pop, you don't try to get into the A-list rooms. You want to develop up the people with you. It's the same thing I found in sync. You want to rise with the people around you. So if you're 22 or 25 or 18, like find people that are around your age and experience level that have the same interest in you, and you guys will all grow together.
Yep. I think that's the thing that like people are always looking for a shortcut. And it's like, yeah, there are things you can do to further your career, but it really is having that patience. And like Jeremy, I think you nailed it. It's like find your community and like you help each other. Like that's how I did it. Like, and my LA experience when I first came out here, like I was in a band, I had like a somewhat a publishing deal. So I already had my feet a little bit wet, but even with that, when I moved out here, I was going to a show or an event or anything, anywhere from 1 to 3 times a week. I was out and about, just like meeting people, getting my face out there, doing the thing. Were most of them duds? Absolutely, they were, but every once in a while it wasn't, and I made a real connection, and it was a connection. Like where I made the most connections of anything. Funny enough, I don't know if you can do this now, but like me and my bandmate, we like made the decision like we're gonna go to South by Southwest and like not play. We're just gonna go there to just like meet people. And when you're at South by Southwest, we went to like God knows how many shows a day when we were there, and we just meet people and we got business cards and we exchanged Instagrams or whatever. And I'm friends with a lot of those people that I met back in 2013 still today. A lot of those people I still do business with just because I just happened to meet them, make a conversation. My music happened to be good, and so they wanted to like talk and do more. And so it's just that like anxiety thing of just like getting out there and like meeting people, like Jeremy's saying, who it's like you're not meeting the president, you're meeting like the assistant to like the lead A&R's assistant at the thing. And maybe they'll be like, hey, I heard about this opportunity, Nate, like I think your music would be sick, like send it to me. So and you never know what's going to kind of like happen from there.
So
If that made any sense at all.
it's a long game.
It's a long game. That's what no one wants to tell you. It's a really long game. Yeah.
So it's funny how quickly the music industry moves. I started doing music at 18, so now I've been doing it for 11 years, right? So I'm just starting to get to the point where coordinators I met when I was 24, 25 are starting to get promotions.
Yep.
And those are the people who, so it's like the assistants who become the coordinators, who become the managers. It's not any different. Like the same people who you're coming up with and making music with and you upgrade together. It's the same relationships, and the people that you get to see go from being assistants to being the heads of companies or starting their own company. Like that's equally as rewarding from a relationship perspective. And you really do want each other to win. And the second that you ask to speak directly to the president or even somebody under the president, that person has a set of relationships where if that person who they know and they have a 20-year standing relationship with can get the job effectively done just as well, then they're just going to go to that person every time because they have a personal relationship and like them. So it's a long game because by the time that you're in it for 10 or 15 years, you realize that there's not that many who started who are still in it. So it's like sometimes it's just that you're the last man standing, and that is usually a testament to you being in it and winning and doing that. But it's a long game because it's super rewarding to see your friends at corporations also start to have those life upgrades, and it's a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah. No, it's really cool to see and do. And like there's something I think Daniel was saying earlier, and I just wanted to like kind of like hit on it before we wrap up here. But like even what Jeremy was saying, where it's like everyone wants to start getting into sync and, like they think they can do it. And what I say to a lot of like, especially like pop songwriters and pop producers or, whatever genre, they're like, well, I can do pop music, then I can do sync. And it's like, in theory, sure. But like you can do pop music because you like put so many hours in to learn how to craft a pop song. And if you think you can just like hop on over and it's like, I guess I'll do sync now, it's like, you're going to have a hard time. You have to like go into it very humble and understand that as like, this is a different thing and it is a different art form. And it takes just as much, it's different talent, but it's just as much talent to like be successful and write for briefs, write for syncs, write sync friendly music. That is a very specific skill set. And you have to want to learn it. It's not something that I think you can do just like casually. I think you can maybe get lucky and get like a sync here and there from like sync camps. But if you want to like actually do it, it's like you got to do it. I learned that where it was like, I don't pretend to be this like sync writer. If a sync opportunity comes up, I'm down to like take a swing, but I don't have the time to like put into actually try and do like real sync, like do it full time and do it the way that, like you three like do it, especially like, yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
I want to say something. Not that you said the wrong thing, but I just want to point out something that has been on my mind, and I feel like the other guests here will agree with me, is there is a tendency sometimes where people throw around this term sync writer or producer, and I really don't like it because I think it's by accident, but it's discounting greater talent of that producer and that songwriter. The reason it bugs me is because I think it's like calling yourself a verse lyricist.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Oh, he just writes verse lyrics. Oh, he's just a sync producer. I don't subscribe to it. And I think that a lot of people have been misled into that there is some career lane where you just write for sync all day. It's not how I see myself. I don't have any problem if someone has carved out that lane and they see it. Obviously we all make the majority of our careers here in sync, and I'm certainly part of that. But I think that when people start putting writers, producers in this box, it's mostly to cap them in some way. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the term sync writer or sync producer, and I hope that writers and producers will stop referring to themselves in that way, because I think it's limiting, and they might not even understand why.
Yeah. And
I'll
that was sync.
piggyback off.
Yeah,
Oh,
I was going to make my joke. Forget it. I was
no,
going to be very
what was your
facetious.
joke?
No, I was going to say, and that was sync writer Jeremy Silver. But,
I'll
sorry, Emily,
piggyback
go ahead.
off of it because I agree. And when I first moved to Nashville, all of the sessions that I would get put in were like, I would be so charmed and excited to be invited into certain rooms. And then I kind of started putting dots together because I'm like, oh, I want to write with other artists. I can write for other artists. I can produce but then I slowly started putting two and two together that like, oh, I'm the person they're bringing in to bring this like sync magic. And the irony is like, and then it kind of like used to hurt my feelings a little bit. But then and then the big irony, which I don't know if you guys feel this, is like the sexy thing is not sync, but what funds all of these businesses is film TV, is this catalog, this powerhouse catalog that like generates so much revenue unless you're a huge pop writer. But like what is so it's interesting, like we do get discounted, and also it's also like kind of like what funds a lot of these publishing companies, which is so interesting. And I do think it takes a certain skill set to be able to not just write, but like deliver a finished record. Like it has to be done, like kept in house between sometimes just two people, like writing, mixing, mastering, and like it sounds fresh. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that is a particular, and to not sound too on the nose and not canned and not like, because we know those tracks exist, but like to make something that feels really authentic to what it is, but still delivering. It's like it is like a certain skill set. So appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. No, that's so
I
true.
think it's
We wouldn't even talk about that, and we have to wrap here pretty much, but like how important it is for like, if you're going to be doing syncs as a producer, it's like you have to pretty much be able to mix and master your own shit too, and like get it to sound really great and quick. And that's such an important part. So we're going to wrap here. Before we do, we always do on these roundtables, we have our little segment called In the Bounce Fold. This is where our guests can kind of share something that they want to plug, a new fun piece of gear that they have. I don't know, I call it producer show and tell. Jeremy, I'll start with you, man. What's your In the Bounce folder this week?
The bounce, it's not new, but I brought it out after probably 5 years of not using it. The Martech MSS 10 mic pre.
Okay, I haven't heard that.
It's like a rectangle. It's like a square face on the front. Really clean, really nice on acoustics. Yeah, it's been a big part of my acoustic guitar sound lately.
Daniel?
I have two short answers. One thing that I really love using, that I use all the time, even though God Particle is taking over. I have this like Better Maker mastering limiter that I love so much. I've just chosen, a lot of time you're on the road and you can't always have things analog on the way in and out. But whenever I'm here, which is most of the time, I just sometimes, especially if you're competing in a playlist, like to some extent, loudness matters, and not just completely screwing up all of your dynamics by just throwing some plugin preset and praying after you just spent so much time on a record and your ears are tired and now you're just hoping that your brick wall bounce is going to work is like, it's important to me. So I just really like analog limiters. My second thing is that I don't leave this studio. Like I wake up and I don't leave, and my fiance is trying to get me out of here more often, but I got these happy lights that just emit actual sunlight frequency. Oh man,
There you go.
check this out. Oh yeah, look at that.
Who needs to go outside anymore?
Look at this. I don't need to go outside. Yeah, here's more time in the studio. So those are my two things.
Oh my God. I mean, really quickly, speaking of mastering, Ozone 12 came out. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's like, I think especially for guys like you, where it's like you're mixing and mastering your own stuff. They have like a couple of new modules where it's like, oh, this is highly useful. Like someone, they want the drums a little bit louder. You can just go on Ozone and you just like, and it sounds amazing. I just like kind of speechless because it is so good. So definitely check it out.
Sorry to interrupt. Track spacer, which for sync, when you're trying to make room for dialogue, sometimes if you happen to be working with picture and dialogue, to throw track spacer on your instrument bus or your music bus, however you have it, and let the dialogue hit the track spacer like that. Pro tip.
Really good advice. Track spacer by Waves Factory, I believe. Really, really great plugin. Emily, back to you. What's your little in the bounce folder?
I have this SM5B microphone that was like my
yeah.
it was like my main, it was like my workhorse, my vocal mic, and it fell and it broke and the capsule broke and it was devastating because to get the SM5B capsule, they're really hard to find. You can put in a 7B capsule in it, but it's like, what the fuck's the point? So I sold it back to my buddy who like sold it to me, and he was just going to sell it for parts. And then he texted me a month ago. He found a capsule, got it replaced with this guy in Nashville, Cole's Picks, if you ever need
I was about to say, I was like, you should send it to Cole's Picks.
Yeah, Cole fixed it, and he installed the capsule, and I just got it back. Look at her. Wait, where is she? Do you see her?
Yeah, that's amazing. That's so funny.
We're reunited.
I was about to tell you before I knew like you'd sold it. Like you said, I was about to be like, oh, you should like see if Cole can fix it. That dude's incredible.
I bought it back.
Yeah. Dude, that's such a good story. I'm about to send him a few mics. I keep putting it off, but I have a couple mics that I've been meaning to sell him. Where it's like, I'll show you. This is a fun. This wasn't going to be my in the bounce folder, but it's still fun. I got so like 15 years ago in Buffalo, I went to like a random like flea market sale. This random guy had all these Electro Voice microphones, and I got 4 of these for $10. And they're each worth like anywhere from like $100 to $200. And most of them are in great working condition. This one, like, it has something wrong with it. It like sounds like it's like this, but it's cool. But I've been meaning to send him all those to kind of fix them up and clean them up. Anyway, everyone should check out Cole's Picks Vintage. I believe that's like that's the website.
Anything. He's super
really, really incredible. Mine in the bounce folder is I had one of my favorite songs come out today. It's with this Canadian indie group called Baby Girl. The record's called All Is Well. It's one of those where it's been like a personal favorite of mine for quite some time, and it came out today. So you guys should check them out and support indie artists.
Listen.
You know,
and
thank you very much. And yeah, I guess that's the episode for today. Thank you to our guests. Thank you to Nate for asking his spot-on question. And thank you to our listeners for checking out the pod. Take care, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to Producer Points. Your support means the world to us. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, and share with fellow music enthusiasts. For an encore, check out our Spotify playlist featuring all the songs we've discussed on the show, giving you the perfect soundtrack to your creative journey. Additional audio and video editing for this episode was done by Nathan Rebello. Until next time, this is Justin Gamella.